Well, hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Gamer Bluecast Morning Show. I'm your host, Adam Blue, 30 plus year video game enthusiast and industry analyst. And today, for March 26, 2025, we're going to go through the latest gaming news, what I've been playing, and just talk games this morning before we all go to work, or at least me. So, morning, Ultronymous Jam Kill X, good to see you. Hope you guys had a good day yesterday. And it is already Wednesday. Like, this week has gone by so fast. I don't even know why I need to even think about the perception of time as the days move on during a week, because it's always the same thing. Why am I so shocked? It's like weather. The time of days or days moving through the week and weather, we're so fascinating. That's like our small talk. Why? There's probably something all inside maybe that we can, I don't know. Now I'm getting all spiritual, but I hope you're doing good, Jam KLX. If you need anything, reach out. RIP, condolences. Maybe we can find some topics today to kind of lighten the day. So let's start with what I was playing. Okay, Rendering Ranger. I've been talking about this. I actually beat it last night. 3 hours and 9 minutes total from, when did I start playing it? Like Monday or over the weekend? I forgot exactly when I got it, but this game is too hard. So when I was saying the game was like so hard, I'm like, well, I'm going to have to use save states. I think that's the only way I can get through. And then it just got harder. And I was watching someone play online and they were using the rewind feature. And the game is called Rendering Ranger Rewind. It's like something, I don't know. But I was like, okay, I'll use the rewind functionality. And you know what? I was able to get through the game. There is no other way that I would get through that game. Maybe if it had checkpoints, but when you die, you have to start all over again. And I was already talking about there's some stages where enemies just fly across the screen like crazy. And I feel like, sure, maybe by luck you could dodge one of the attacks, but I feel like you're going to get hit no matter what. In this game, you're going to get hit. And that's why it gives you a lot of health as you go. You do get health, but you get it removed fast. And there are some bosses that you need to know the timing. Like, let's say there's this boss that's a block, right? And you're the ship. It's a big block, and it follows you, but even up and down to where you wouldn't be able to then get past it. So it's like every moment you have to time everything. It's one of those games that the end of that time where, one, there was not many games to choose from, and two, you were just playing it over and over, and you were memorizing, and that's the basis of this, how this game works. It's repetition, playing over and over to get down the I guess the flow of just the feeling, more than just memorizing parts. There's more to it. And so it's like muscle memory thing, and so you don't really get that with this. And I don't, and sure, I could choose to then, I'm going to take my time and play, but that will take a long time. And I think the nature of video games nowadays is I can then just jump into a game that really, even if it's hard, there are a lot of systems in place that are keeping my mind going. With something like Rendering Ranger R, I like what it does, but I can only do it in small chunks because there's not much to it. It's like that with any retro game, even Castlevania 2D side scroller. I could sit down, I'll play an hour session maybe, but then I'll stop, and maybe not even an hour, and then I'll move on. And then, a lot of times I'll do something like, and it's funny because I feel like for me, it's these extremes that I go through. So then like I'll get into the Rise of Ronin, which I think was a perfect sweet spot. That in Assassin's Creed, which was like an elevated Rise of the Ronin, to the point to where with Assassin's Creed, I was like, okay, there's too much for me to choose from to do. I think the best game situation, and it could be depending on your mindset. I don't think it's an absolute, but it's this idea of where you're in the right mode of just the right number of things to do, but not too much. So you're not burning yourself out, but you're keeping yourself and your mind going. And I think it's a general population consciousness growth thing, kind of like when it comes to the automobile. Most people by the time they have to learn how to drive cars. And I'm saying most people, not everybody, but most people do. And it's just a normal part of life. But if all of a sudden it was the year 1125 and then cars appeared and like everyone's time to drive cars, it's going to be a while for everyone to figure out, for it to be a part of, you know what I mean? So I think video game mechanics and genres, and I guess, yeah, this is kind of something I've been talking about before, go through this cultural phase where the majority move on because they need more of that, a little deeper. I think that's why, and not personally, I didn't care for this, but I think that's why the RTS sort of morphed into the MOBA. There was the MOBA is grounded in RTS. The RTS went away, the MOBA came in, became popular. The MOBA is going on the wayside, but I think there was this idea of, okay, we all get base building RTSs. What else could you do with that sort of mechanical nature of controlling the screen? And I think that's where MOBAs came from. And then RTSs kind of died out. It's interesting, but these genres never really fully die out. Okay, so something else I played that's actually not on here, which is strange, is the Blizzard game, the Blizzard Arcade pack came out on Game Pass. And I'm a huge fan of Blackthorn. Played it on PC, SNES, and 32X back in the day. 32X was my favorite version. I don't know if I ever beat them. I just know I have memories of writing down the passwords to get to the next, to save my spot so I can get to the next level. So yeah, it didn't show up on here. I'm very confused as to why it didn't. Let me just launch the Blizzard app to see. Oh no, I'd have to launch the Xbox. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm playing it through the Xbox and no achievements. It's very strange how they do that sometimes, because it used to be Microsoft. It was like if you wanted to be within the ecosystem, you had to have achievements, and they kind of went away with that. And I noticed specifically with Blizzard stuff. Okay, so open the Xbox app, and I know I'm not sharing that part of my screen, but I'm just seeing real quick if I go click on Blizzard Arcade Collection. It doesn't even have stats of anything. Time I've played. It's interesting. It does say in the Blizzard app, Battle.net, it does say, included with Game Pass. So, I'm going to complain about Microsoft. And I think if I was to make a complaint about Microsoft overall, the only thing I think they've been doing wrong is kind of having poor first party support. Now, I got to say their game support's getting better overall, but they've always been good at feature sets. They've always been good at the quality of life systems around a game. And so it is surprising that with the Blizzard Arcade, they are not doing the achievements, even though you can open it in Game Pass and all that. That kind of goes against what they've always said. So interesting. Because, and hey, it might not be a big deal, but I feel like once you stop doing something you hold important, or you quit, or you give up, you're almost giving up. And what else would you then give up? All right. Okay, let's go. Did you check the individual games from that collection? Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of the other games that much, like the Rock and Roll Racing and Lost Vikings is mainly Blackthorn. Love that game. Hey Chris, good to see you. Yeah, that's right. Going back to StarCraft 2. Huge fan of the original StarCraft. Like I wish I could track my time from the 90s. Playing Brood War online, it was insane. That time, loved it. And then StarCraft 2 came out, and I played quite a bit. Look at that, 133 achievements out of 2,000. That's insane that it has that many achievements. But I played a lot, didn't I? I didn't play the Protoss campaign. That's the only one. I was buying the special editions for each one as they were coming out, and I don't know. something happened with StarCraft 2. I think it was splitting it up into 3 and then releasing them over time just kind of made me, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? Okay, let's head back. Oh, I meant for how they are listed in Exophase. Oh, that, yeah, you know what? It would then have popped up on this main screen if that was the case. But you actually do bring up a good point. Is there a release of the game that would be retro achievements? I could play the game on retro achievements and it would track it. Here's the thing though. There's 3 versions you can play in the Blizzard Arcade. There is the SNES version, the 32X version. Well, they call it 32-bit version. I don't know why they didn't just say 32X. I don't know. But then there's a definitive version, which is interesting. I'm surprised it doesn't use the speaking of Rendering Ranger in that time period, the 32X version of Blackthorn used rendering graphics, and then the pre-rendered graphics. And this definitive version doesn't, which maybe it's to keep it more pure. I don't know. Okay. Every time I hear BattleNet, I think Battle Network. Where's my net Navi Capcom? Yeah, BattleNet. I remember I was surprised when I first heard about BattleNet. So this is back when I think it was right after Warcraft 2 came out, because then they were coming out with the Warcraft 2 BattleNet version. So it was around StarCraft, yeah. And I remember that concept being interesting, how there's these companies that created these online servers to play, and they would have a name. And I always thought that's weird. Why don't you just play from the menu? And the games ended up, doing that. So yeah. Okay. Let's. Yeah. And I also was playing Gal Guardians, Servants of the Dark demo, because this game comes out today. Just I'm not going to buy it yet, and you could play a large chunk of the game in the demo, and it carries over. So I'm gonna do that. That's probably gonna be my main gaming this week. All right. Let's look at Famitsu review scores. This is for issue 1892. Okay, AI Limit. That is that Souls-like game. 8988. Wow. And then First Berserker Kazan, all 9s. And then Debug Girl. Scholars may never heard of those. Kind of average scores. It seems kind of high for AI Limit in the First Berserker. But it could be that they are that great. In fact, I haven't looked if there are any are the reviews up. So let's see. This comes out tomorrow. Over 1,000 reviews already. Wow. So if you guys remember, I played the demo on here once or twice, maybe once, and I think it's really well made. I guess it's just like, again, it's like kind of the same thing I've done before. So I'm going to see if there's any reviews going on. Okay, PC Gamer 80. I don't know what Steam 9, that's probably like the cumulative score, I guess, against all the reviews users have put in. Okay, so this was even yesterday, the reviews came out. And this says 2 days. Okay. It looks like 80 average, 78% recommended. It seems to have the scores that I would expect from it. Because again, I played the demo and I think it's a really fun and competent game. I didn't see anything wrong with it, except that it depends if I'm really in the mood to do a Souls-like. But from what I saw and played, it was really fun. And I think these reviews reflect that. So that's great. Another game doing well. Always good to hear. Jim KLX, glad to hear Kazan's doing well. If it gets enough sales, we'll be getting more DNF spinoffs and more genres. Okay. That's good. And that's the smart thing for these companies to do, like that other dev that did Cellar Blade. You make a game that can make you money, so then you can make the types of games you kind of want to make. So that's cool. Let's see. Let's move on to Assassin's Creed Shadows sold more physical UK copies in 1 week than Star Wars Outlaws did in 3 months. So I find that interesting for a lot of reasons. So I'm surprised Star Wars Outlaws didn't do as well, didn't have that sort of like positive, like awesome, I don't know, online conversation around the game. Even though I think Outlaws is so fun and so good, it was in my top game of the year, if not the game. I forget which one I called game of the year last year, but I I do think it was a mix of things that I I feel like I have a bias for Star Wars, so I would assume it wouldn't be that. For instance, the Disney stuff, how Star Wars has kind of slowly come out with stuff that's just kind of subpar, and then people are like, "What is this?" More confusion around the brand identity than anything. And as a fan, I just thought, okay, that's just what I'm seeing. But no, I think just if you're on the outside, it's even worse. Of what is Star Wars? Why are people talking crap about this? Or maybe you went and saw a movie and you're like, yeah, that was okay. Was it Star Wars? I don't know. And to the point to where the game. Now again, this is physical, but the reason I bring this up is also because I feel like the Star Wars fan would potentially be buying this as a physical game. That's one, but but on the other hand, Assassin's Creed, I feel like it's kind of weird to say this, and not that I'm saying I agree with the principle, but Assassin's Creed is like Call of Duty. When you think video games, oh, what's a video game? Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Mario. I think it's that type of thing. And so I could see hardcore gamers then, or enthusiasts wanting to buy the physical copy of Assassin's Creed more than a modern day Star Wars fan would want to buy a physical copy of Outlaws. And that really does say a lot about where we are. What I almost feel like it says more about Star Wars than video games, because really Outlaws is an amazing technical achievement. I mean, considering most video games that come out, there's not as many that have the graphical fidelity and stuff of Ubisoft titles because they're AAA. And I don't know where I was really going with that thought, but it's just very interesting that it's like it doesn't matter. Yeah, I think there was a time where you can make a game with any graphics and any IP and like kind of know what it's going to do. Now you can't. And there's very much a lot of so many video games to play. There's live service. It's that thing of genre I keep talking about, where I think to be successful in the video game industry, you can't look at it as a whole. You have to find a market that you you can add value to. I feel like even if you aren't an Assassin's Creed fan, you could be interested in Shadows on the premise of being in Ninja Samurai Feudal Japan. Exactly. It is so fun to do that. When I'm jumping into Assassin's Creed, at no point am I thinking, oh, I can't wait to look at my DNA memory and figure out what my ancestors did. No, I don't care about the story, none of that. Just the way they do high production value combat. Even if it's simple combat, it looks good. Now, I didn't play a lot of Valhalla, but I feel like this combat's way better than Valhalla. I feel like it's the best AC combat has ever been. Um, but that might be a uninformed take. Star Wars Outlaws feels very much like I have to be into Star Wars to be into it, which given Star Wars current, yeah. And that's exactly what it is, because then when you do play this game, it does it does a good thing that I don't think one people are expecting, and two, I think the more mainstream Star Wars fan wouldn't like it. And it's the non-force lightsaber stuff. Playing Outlaws, and it's in the name, is like playing Grand Theft Auto just in Star Wars, because of the nature of the game. It's kind of like the crime stuff. I find that interesting because we have the Jedi, the Fallen Order games. And to be honest, I'm not too much of a fan of those games. I feel like they're very basic games, and I'm taking out of the Star. I haven't played much of the second one really, but it was mainly the first one. The level of design in the first one just didn't make sense. Again, I think it was just made for a mainstream audience, because as a Star Wars fan, if I am breaking through a mountain that no one has seen the artifacts on the other side, and then I'm going through a cavern in there, and then I'm in this area where I have to figure out how to leap into a platform in the middle, but then there's stormtroopers there waiting for me. And it's like, how did stormtroopers get here? How do stormtroopers, or how are they littered throughout? So it's like I don't know. That's kind of a weird thing to complain about, but that kind of goes to this be into Star Wars. I was into Star Wars to a point where Fallen Order almost felt like it was just using Star Wars, or whereas Outlaws is like a simulation. Anyway, let's move on. Multiple publishers are ready to delay their games to avoid GTA 6 onslaught, it's claimed. So that's very interesting. At least 2 live service developers have also said they will shift major updates. Okay. Rockstar's huge sequel is officially due to release this fall, and although it still does not have a confirmed release date, parent company Take-Two recently claimed it's on track. Market analysts are expecting GTA 6 to be by far the biggest release of 2025, and unsurprisingly, multiple major publishers are prepared to move their own releases in order to avoid it, according to the game business. Oh, is that the new... Yeah, there we go. The new... sorry for this aside, but this is something that I wanted to follow. I talked about the news. Yeah, I'll have to come back to this later, but let's read this. Rockstar Games always suck a lot of money and, more importantly, time out of the market. Broly said, the boss of one of the world's biggest game publishers. We don't want to be anywhere near that. We are working up multiple different plans for our titles. I wonder who that would be. The only ones I could think of are Ubisoft, EA. It's hard because I don't think Nintendo cares, and who knows, we might get an announcement. I also don't think Microsoft or Sony care as much because it could be account or hardware sales for them. Another senior exec is said to have added, even without GTA, it's immensely difficult to find free time for new games to shine. Time is the real scarcity for us, not money. It's tough out there. A third AAA publisher based in Europe told TGB that its most significant concern is if GTA launches at the end of October or early November, giving it little space to maneuver its own titles. We don't want to launch just before or just after the game. If it arrives in late October, that means you either have to launch early, which a lot of people seem to be doing with the recent glut of summer release dates, or go later, putting you up against the Black Friday sales. Top 10 live service games who suggested they would move updates. Interesting. GTA 6 is basically a huge meteor, and we will stay clear. I'm bad with words. Of the blast zone, one studio boss said. We will nudge our release back or forward 3 weeks to avoid it. Of course, the problem is everyone is going to do the same. So 3 to 4 weeks before or after GTA 6, you're going to get a load of games dropping content in what they believe will be the safe zone. It's going to be very interesting. Speaking to the FT earlier this year, analysts at DFC Intelligence predicted that GTA 6 would generate $3.2 billion during its first year on sale, which is double what its predecessor managed back in 2013. Dang. Significantly more than 2024's biggest movies, Inside Out and Deadpool. Yeah, that's right. I forgot what I was listening to. Another podcast yesterday. We're just talking about how the video game industry makes like 3 times the amount or some amount more than movies, music, and TV combined, which is really crazy to think. It's crazy to think because that's completely opposite to what I was dealing with growing up in the 90s, where like video games was the outcast thing. It's very interesting how it's changed. But again, that kind of also leads into my point that the games market is not what it used to be, and video game companies don't take that in account when they're marketing their games. It's kind of like I don't know. I'm trying to find a good analogy on the spot. I can't. I'll come up with one later. Okay. Let's see. What else did I have up here? Nintendo Switch 2 will have a 3-phase launch plan for its games. Okay, with Nintendo Switch 2 just 1 week from its official full reveal, this year's annual GDC was buzzing with talk around the future of the console. One such discussion was around the Nintendo Switch 2 launch date, which, according to people that I spoke at the event falls in June, which I think that's what we're all thinking. Okay, a lot of filler words. According to sources, so then the Switch 2 launch will launch its games in a 3-phase strategy, starting with primarily first-party games on launch. Okay, according to sources, the second stage will arrive in October, November for third-party studios, much of which are expecting the dev kits. Wow, is that what it's about? Is it really they're just kind of limiting the access, I guess, developers could do? Because it would make sense for on launch date to have a lot of third-party support. In addition to the talk of the 3-phase launch plan, it was said that the third phase for games would be in the holiday period, which is that really a phase? That's just what happens. Let's see. Instar Game has also learned that select media and creators will be attending Nintendo Switch 2 hands-on next week. They'll get hands-on. Cool. On a bunch of its launch games. So, good point, though. Good point now that I'm thinking about it, is you do want the Switch 2 to launch with first-party games that give an experience that you can't get anywhere else. I mean, it would be good to have the third-party on top of that, especially actually, I don't know. There is not a third-party I can think of. I can think of first-party. I could think of Calamity Wars. Remember the Hyrule Warriors? I hope that gets released with, not Twilight Princess, but Tears of the Kingdom. If they release that with like higher frame rate graphical fidelity, I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. Let's see. Yeah, the hands-on thing next week, and then it's scheduled to be fully revealed on April 2nd, which is so soon. So that would be next Wednesday, and I have a show. Maybe I can plan it around that. Let's see. So more in depth. So yeah, that is according to various Gaming Inside, Nintendo is also planning a Nintendo Direct later this week. Crazy. I mean, crazy Nintendo news to be coming out, but it's about that time. Yeah, I want to see Nintendo do something neat to kind of like shake things up. What's up, Talos? Oh, you're recording. Oh, pretty neat. Pretty neat. Okay. Okay, so this is very interesting. Game Informer is back, which, obviously it shut down last year sometime. I forget when it was. But then some company came in and swooped in and like, yeah, let's put this back. So that's very interesting. I feel like you don't see that often because I guess it doesn't make sense to happen. It's very interesting because the EGM did that compendium, the Kickstarter, and I got that. It hasn't come in yet, but yeah, I think what's very interesting is just thinking about games media. There's not really a games media news outlet that I follow that I trust. It's like I do with the news here. I just a bunch of websites I throw in usually, and these are usually websites that end up being cited a lot. But sometimes I can still see that there's some of that kind of clickbaity fluff in there, and maybe this is a way for a kind of a reputable, professional style game journalist out, because I almost feel like they don't exist. When they try to exist, they don't. I enjoy gaming personalities that have some goofiness to it or are funny, but also I want to sometimes be given some pretty specific information straight away. And there's a big difference with IGN and Game Informer. I follow IGN because I am getting news, and that's kind of their thing. But I also feel like a lot of times with IGN, the way in which I'm being delivered the news isn't really backed by someone that's excited about delivering the news. Like, really, for IGN, it feels like content being churned out just to deliver up-to-date stuff. With Game Informer, it's always really felt like gamers that were in this. I've met a few of the guys over the years, back when I used to go to conventions more often, especially QuakeCon, because it's in my backyard. Game Informer people would be there. So I think what I'm getting out of that is it would be cool to see a sort of respectable, reputable game journalist outlet that you can look to. because I feel like you can do that with like film with movies. I mean, those have been around for a lot longer. And I think that it's space when it comes to movies and film and all that. It's space when it came to journalism integrity had already existed. And video games did, sure, in the 90s, but these were people that were already studying to be journalists. But then you get people that grow up wanting to be game, kind of like me, although I was a little older, but people that grow up and then when they're on their own, they want to cover games, but they do it with any sort of previous background knowledge of journalism. So then what you do is you get people like and I'm not calling anyone out negatively, but like Asmongold, these bigger YouTubers that do play games with them, they talk other stuff. A lot of times their audience is very young because then at that point too, a younger audience doesn't really understand the information they're getting in terms of like what to trust, what not to trust. That's kind of like a phase you have to go through. So that's why I hope if younger people are coming across my channel, they get good value out of it. Since it's backwards compatible, then they have that as a spacer to keep stuff better guarded and maintain quality standards, probably. Yeah? Yeah, that's a good point, too. Yeah, that made me think as they release these, they could really do the phase one. So let's say they do their phase one where it's their first party stuff, but they could trickle out like, oh, here's an update for Calamity Wars or something, I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, guys, I'm going to head out. That was a lot of fun. I'll be back tomorrow, some more news. Yeah, isn't there something being announced tomorrow or something? Or coming out tomorrow? I don't know. Yeah, we'll talk then. Until then, have a good rest of the day. We'll talk later.